Hello, my Bill 5000 Nation. How's everyone doing? All right, just want to get a few things out of the way real fast. Sorry y'all didn't get that chapter on Tuesday. I've been having some major computer problems. Well, user error. Let me go ahead and 404 file not found in my life. You know what I mean? That's just how it goes. Yeah. So I am very sorry I couldn't get into studios on my phone to do anything. I couldn't get into it on the computer to do anything. I was locked out of everything. I'm pretty sure the drastic extent of the bill I had to go through was, well, it has two thumbs and kind of goofy at times. It was this guy's fault. So it is what it is, and I'm very sorry about that. And I'm also very sorry I couldn't get back to some of your comments the way I normally do. Like I said, I couldn't get on studios through anything. I couldn't log into my YouTube. I fuckered up somewhere. Yeah. All right. So that's out of the way. There's one more thing I want to talk about. October is coming up, and I know I do a video Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, but I'm going to throw in one on Wednesdays that is just, scary, like maybe some slapped hams, King Frostmere, Mine CTV, just something just spooky, just for the Halloween season. I figured that'd be kind of nice. Y'all have any suggestions on, like some scarier channels like that I can do? Let me know. I'll look into them. All right. Business is out the way. Now we can get serious. It's been a weird day, people. Yeah. All right. So we are here with the Mr. Ballin video. This was actually requested by a viewer. So, yeah. I like it when y'all request things. I don't have to pick them out because I'm usually traumatized when I pick them out. They just All right. So, let's go ahead and get this one is titled 4 Kids Vanished from Locked Cars, Missing 411 Part 10. I do like the Missing 411. I like about anything Mr. Ballin does, to be honest with you. I ain't even going to lie. All right, so let's go ahead and get into today's video. Go ahead and turn the lights down low, put on something comfy, cuddle up with someone special. Let's get back at it.
People are going missing all over North America under baffling conditions. In some cases, there are people where someone's looking right at them, they turn around, and then, moments later, they're gone. Or in some cases, people will go missing and then are found again in locations that are impossible to get to. And so one man named David Politis, who's a former police detective, began investigating these very strange disappearances because nobody else was. And he started compiling what he was finding in an absolutely fascinating book series called Missing 411. And so as I read through all of his books, I've begun pulling some of the more interesting cases that he details and highlighting them on this channel. Today, I'm going to focus on 4 instances of kids going missing after being in locked vehicles. But before we get into today's stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right channel because that's all I do and I upload 3, 4, even 5 times every week. If that's of interest to you, please throw the like button into the bottomless pit near Ellensburg, Washington, and also subscribe to this channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of my weekly uploads. All right, let's get into today's stories.
Lord.
On October 16th, 1930, John Sullivan, who was with his nephew, Lawrence Sullivan, who was only 3 years old, they were driving together in the middle of the Nevada desert. They were about 150 miles away from Reno in this very remote area. John was a gold prospector and he was heading to an area that he wanted to scout out and see if it was a proper place to prospect for gold. This area, the roads didn't even go to it. You had to drive down this road where it just kind of dead ends in the middle of the desert, right near this huge steep mountain range. range, at which point you needed to park your car, get out, and then walk over this hill right in front of where the road ends. And it was going to be over that hill, looking down into this valley where John wanted to prospect. So he drives down the road, he parks the car, and he turns to Lawrence and he says, "Hey, I'm going to go over this hill for a minute and check the area out. I'll be back in just a couple of minutes. Stay in here. Don't leave the car. I'll be right back." John gets out, he locks the car, he walks up to the top of the hill, and he turns around, looks at Lawrence, and waves at him. Lawrence looks up at his uncle and he waves back, and he's smiling. So clear interaction. Lawrence knows where John is and where John's going. John can clearly see Lawrence. There's no one in the area too. I'm talking, this is remote as remote can be. You're just right up against this mountain. That's the only thing going on in this area. So John turns his back on Lawrence.
Abominable snowman. That's what I say it is. It has to be. Gotta be. It is.
He goes over the hill. He's now out of sight of the vehicle, and he does a short inspection of this area that he wanted to prospect. He goes back up over the hill, and he sees immediately that the door is now open and Lawrence is not in the vehicle anymore. John is not immediately concerned because it's only been a couple of minutes. He can't have gone very far, and there's nowhere to even go. There's no trees. I mean, basically, it's just this mountain right here. But beyond the mountain, there's really nowhere to go. So he goes down, he looks in the car, he looks under the car, he's yelling for Lawrence, no response. And sound carried really well in this.
He just said sound carried really well. I mean, wouldn't he hear the door slam? Okay. I'm sure the boy, his nephew, I'm not for sure how old he is, but I'm sure someone came up to the car and was like, "Hey, brother, you want some candy?" He'd be like, and you would hear that. So evidently that either sound does not carry very well, or he left that car of his own free will. I mean, because either you're going to hear someone bust out a window, you're going to hear a door slam, or you're going to hear that poor boy hollering and screaming. I'm sorry, but I'm going to bite the living shit out of you if you put your hand over my mouth. I don't give a damn. One of us is going to scream.
Area. After a little while and he can't hear anything, he hasn't seen Lawrence, he's starting to get very desperate because they are in the middle of nowhere and the temperatures are going to drop well below freezing at night. So John has to make this totally painful decision to get in his car and drive and get help. And so he leaves Lawrence because he can't find him. He gets help. The sheriff comes out there and they start this massive search for this child. This whole time, John is convinced someone had to abduct him because Lawrence knew where John was. If he was to get out of the vehicle, let's say, he would have walked over the hill to where John was. John was just on the other side of the hill. It doesn't make any sense that Lawrence would get out and wander in a different direction. He would have gone to John. They were very close. He might have wanted to see what he was doing on the other side of the hill. In the first few days of the search, they can't find any tracks of the child or another person that could have potentially abducted him, or even tracks of an animal that could have potentially taken Lawrence away. There's just nothing. They did find his hat, but that was it. There's no other evidence to go off of. And so after 4 days of searching, the newspapers began running headlines about potentially an eagle swooping down and taking Lawrence away, because that's all anyone could speculate given the fact that there was no tracks anywhere and that his hat had fallen off. At this point, the police feel totally helpless. They don't understand.
Now, I have heard some shit in my time. I have. I'm usually from this man right here. I have heard quite a few interesting tales, but a fucking eagle. Big do eagles actually get then if they can carry off a full-fledged person? And how big was the how old was the How old was the nephew? Was he a chunky nephew? Was he a scrawny nephew? I mean, I need to know some info here. You know what I mean? But an eagle, because it was an abominable snowman. They don't leave tracks in snow, I'm pretty sure. They're abominable.
And how this child has managed to evade capture. They're not ready to accept that an eagle has taken him away. And so the police...
I wouldn't accept an eagle carrying no one away ever, unless it was a baby. And by baby, I mean baby, toddler. I mean, not my kids. My kids are all Thunderbuns. I have nothing to worry about. Why am I so green? I need to fix that. That's annoying. I'm sorry, peoples. It's been a day.
Bring in a Native American tracker who was known in the area as an exceptional tracker. So this tracker comes in and manages to pick up a partial trail of this child. And he starts following it, and they get 7 miles away from where this boy went missing. And the tracker begins going up the side of this cliff. They have to actually bring in climbing equipment to get up this cliff. They go 1,400 feet up this cliff. So over 400 meters, they're going up this sheer cliff with climbing equipment. And they get all the way up there, and there's this one little shelf, this one little rocky shelf that this tracker has brought them to. And sure enough, on this shelf is Lawrence, and he's more or less unharmed. He's sleeping, but he's on this little shelf. He's tucked up against this tree. But interestingly, the tree had this bough that was fairly elastic, and it had clearly been placed over his neck, basically trapping him tight up against the mountain. It was like he had fallen into a trap.
My ADD ADHD keeps kicking in on me really bad today, and I really am sorry, people. But I'm less green, and that's all I know. Yay! All right, back to work.
Because the police said that had he moved suddenly, he would have broken his neck the way he was positioned. So the police carefully undo the branch, and they bring the boy down, which was a total task considering how far up they were. And he's unharmed. He's a couple scratches on his face, but that's about it. They have no idea how he won.
The ego dropped him halfway through. He's like, damn, this boy's just too damn heavy, and just went.
Got 7 miles away, and then over 400 meters up a sheer cliff, so 1,400 feet up a sheer cliff that adults needed climbing equipment to get to. And then how did you survive the below freezing temperatures? You were out here for nearly a week. Nobody knows.
It was an eagle. Hey, okay, what was that movie? Oh, the one with Will Smith and his kid in After Earth or something like that. Remember the bird? It came down and laid on him. I mean, it died in the process. Was there a bird carcass? You all know the movie I'm talking about. Did he or did he not? The boy had to get to like certain hot spots to stay warm and not die because it gets so cold. And at the last one, he couldn't make it, and that bird like laid on top of him and kept him warm. He didn't die. The bird died. He didn't die. That's the answer. I was always told, when nothing else makes sense, the most outlandish answer has to be true. So the bird came down, opened up the truck while he was dive bombing. This is my theory. Somehow this telepathic bird used his bird brain and opened up the truck door, swooped down and opened up the other truck door too, because he needed to be. And when he did, like he came in, he grabbed the boy and he took off. And then whenever he come back, went that way, his hat fell off. And then he was like, yeah, I got bird power. Oh shit, no, I don't. And then he was like, okay, we got to stop. And the bird tried to raise him. And then the bird died. That's what happened. That's what happened. Guarantee it.
On October 19th, 1973, James and Carol Duffy decide they want to go camping. So they have this big RV camper and they load up their 2 kids, Jimmy, who was 2, and Natalie, who was a little over 1 year old. They load them in the RV along with their 2 cats, and they take off for Lake Wenatchee, which is in the state of Washington. It's this beautiful campsite where lots of people with RVs would park right up against this lake. So they make it to Lake Wenatchee, they park their RV, they all get out, they're going on a little walk, but the kids seem fussy, and so Carol and James decide to put them down for a nap. Carol takes the kids inside the RV, she puts them down for a nap. They're in there with the 2 cats. She shuts and locks the RV and goes outside. At this point, James says he wants to go scout for a good hunting spot around where they were camping. And so James takes off and he's looking for a place to go hunting. And Carol decides she's going to walk a little ways around the lake, but keeping an eye on the RV the whole time. And also James was within eyesight of the camper as well. And after about 15 minutes, James goes back to the camper and checks on the kids. Carol would say she saw James doing that and kind of looked over to get the thumbs up from James to make sure the kids are okay. James goes in, the kids are sleeping, the cats are sleeping. James comes out of the camper, he shuts and locks it.
Cats in the cradle and silver spoon.
He turns and he sees Carol. She's about 100 meters away, so a little over 300.
Look, I'm extra weird today. I would say I'm sorry, but I mean, we all know I'm probably not sorry.
Feet away, he gives her a thumbs up and then actually walks over to her. So he's gonna go walk around with his wife now. So he makes it over to Carol.
That's what they do.
And they're walking a little bit farther away, so they're still only about 150 meters away from their camper when they hear a scream coming from their camper. When they both turned around, there was a big tree kind of obscuring their view to the camper, so they kind of ran back on the path to get a better look at their camper, and all they can see is the door to the camper is now open. So the two of them sprint over to the camper. James gets there first, he goes inside, and his son, Jimmy, is gone. Their youngest child, Natalie, was still sleeping, and their two cats were still sleeping. Remember, Carol and James were on the other side of this lake about 100 meters away when they heard this screech coming from the RV. It seems odd that the cats and Natalie wouldn't wake up to that, but they didn't. Yeah. After an initial frantic search of the area where they can't find Jimmy or any sign of Jimmy, they call the police, they show up, and they begin doing a search themselves. And after 2 hours of
bet it was that damn bird again. Telling you, it was the bird.
Aggressively combing this whole campsite and talking to all the other people that were there. There wasn't that many people there, so they were able to interview everyone, and everyone had an alibi. No one was near their camper. The police start to feel really suspicious about Carol and James. And in fact, they straight up accuse James of hurting his child and trying to cover it up. But James and Carol swear they were on the other side of the lake there. They heard that scream. They ran over. This is what we found. And so for 4 days, there's this massive search with canines, helicopters, you name it. They are combing the area. They're interviewing everyone they can. There is nothing, no sign of this child. And so the suspicion that Carol or James had something to do with the disappearance of this child only grew. And so eventually both parents were subjected to a polygraph test and both stuck to their story and both passed. They had nothing to do with the disappearance of their child. They were telling the truth. The police...
So when you look at me now and say, how's your tongue tasting your own ass, Poindexter? Man, I hate getting blamed for stuff I don't do. That is... I've gotten over it since I'm older. It's more like, I know what I do. But I get it. There's plenty of parents out there that would hurt their kids. You see it in the news all day. It is freaking god-awful. Freaking god-awful, all right? I'm going to be one of the first people to ever admit it. No, I'm really not the first person to admit it. I just wanted to say that. But I will tell you right now, I know there are people out there that don't give two shits about their kids. But not everyone's like that. And the sad thing is there's so many people that are like that it gives the good parents who actually care a really bad name. And it makes things 10 times harder because of the time that they're spending thinking it was them and polygraphing them. You could have your ass out there looking for my damn kid. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous.
Still felt like there's something off here about these parents. They must have had something to do with this. And so they really dug into their backgrounds and the family backgrounds, talking to friends and family. And every single person in this family's circle and even outer circle said, no, they care about their kids. They would never harm Jimmy. But through their digging, one thing that did come up is that Jimmy was actually considered a very frail child that basically couldn't do anything without assistance. So between the polygraph test that rules out the parents as being potentially responsible And now this information that Jimmy was this very frail child who's also 2, right? He didn't get up, open the camper, escape, and then evade this massive search effort. That didn't happen either. So all you're left with is abduction. But the police, they basically cordoned off this whole site and were able to account for every single person that was in the park at any time while the Duffys were there. And every single person had an alibi and completely checked out. Eventually, the search for Jimmy was terminated, and to this day, almost 50 years later, we still have no idea what happened to Jimmy, where he went, and how he got there.
And that's awful. He's probably being raised by either that eagle from the other story, some wolves, Bigfoot, aliens. To the power and the harm. Same.
Late at night on March 26th, 1962, the Crawford family, who lived in Tennessee, noticed their 1-year-old was sick, so they wanted to take her to the doctor's office. Mr. and Mrs. Crawford hop in the car with their 1-year-old, and they bring along their 3-year-old named Faye. They drive to the doctor's office. Turns out the 1-year-old's going to be just fine. They give the kid some medication. They head back to their house, and when they pull into the driveway, Mr. and Mrs. Crawford turn around. The 1-year-old is awake, but the 3-year-old, Faye, is fast asleep. So the parents look at each other and they say, okay, we'll get the baby inside. We'll give Faye a couple more minutes to sleep inside the car, and then we'll come out and we'll get her. So Mr. and Mrs. Crawford carefully get the 1-year-old out without waking Faye up. They shut the door. They lock it. The windows are up. They go into the house. They put their 1-year-old down.
How long ago was this? Who leaves their baby in a car? I'm sorry. Didn't know. My kids was the first things out of the car into the house before I take in any damn thing. I don't care if my milk's going bad, my cheese is melted. I don't give a shit. What kind of fucked shit it's... No. No. You don't even leave a car. Put the windows up. Put dogs... I don't know why I just ran my fingers through my hair. Not a damn one of you laugh at me, okay? I'm gonna do it for you. That was dumb. I don't know. I was like, what? Bet you wish you had this lion's mane, don't you? Yeah, this ain't a beard, My hair just got scared of my brain because it's so powerful that it ran to my face. I like that. Write that down.
And literally maybe a couple of minutes goes by. They come out and the doors are still shut, but Faye is gone. Now, because the vehicle was still shut, they're thinking, oh, she must have gotten out of her seat and maybe is tucked under the seats. So they run over and they look inside, and Faye's nowhere to be found. She's not in the vehicle. So the vehicle itself had only 2 doors. There was 2 rows of seating, but only 2 doors. If you were in the back seat, like Faye was, you would need to push down, fold down one of the 2 front seats and then open that door to get out. But both door handles on the inside were broken off. They did not work. You would have to manually roll down a window and then reach outside the car and use the outside door handle to open either door.
I know them kind of cars. We had an old Buick like that. We called it Old Blue. You couldn't lock it because if you did, there was no way to unlock it because the lock thing would go all the way down, like where it was broke off. And the way it was broke, like it was the metal part, so you'd have to replace the whole thing. And we wasn't doing that shit. We was bored. Still am. I ain't doing that shit. And the handle was broken on the passenger side, but luckily the window was also broken on the passenger side too. So, you couldn't just roll your window down, reach out and grab it. You'd have to wait for whoever was driving to actually get out the damn car or walk around, open your door for them. That was nice though. I always loved it. It was like I was getting, it's like, yeah, open that door. Yeah. I love old hoopties. It was a freaking boat, bro.
So the parents are looking at the vehicle and the doors are shut, the windows are up, everything is still locked. And while it is possible that Faye could have, in theory, got out of her car seat, folded down one of the 2 front seats, rolled down a...
Phase 3, right? Okay, for one, she could. I mean, 3-year-olds are some tricky little sons of bitches. We all know that. terrible 2s, horrible 3s, fucked up 4s. It just keeps getting worse until they turn 18, and then you're like, you're the state's problem now. But I don't see a 3-year-old. Okay, in some of them older cars, those seats weren't always the easiest to get forward. I mean, they wasn't. For a 3-year-old to be able to unbuckle her thing after waking up, and they said they was only going to leave her out there for a few minutes. So within a few minutes of waking up, you know, kids are like, oh. Mine was anyways. I don't know about yours, but that's how mine was. Then I would probably be able to see her getting down, popping the little thing up and pushing forward if there was one of those. And then, but having to roll that window down, I mean, that's going to be a little difficult for a little kid to be able to reach it the whole. Plus, she's a little kid. Why would she even do that? She would just crawl between the seats. Duh, McFly. She would just climb between the seats. That's what I used to do whenever I was in the back, and Grandma didn't feel like getting me out the back, and I couldn't do the seat thing because I was too little. She's like, come on. And I would just climb over, and then I'd get the hell out the car. So, I mean, it's possible, but I don't think she's going to really give two shits about rolling the window back up and then shutting the door. And plus, it was probably an old, heavy-duty car. Those doors, oof, when they shut, they would have heard that.
Window, reached out, opened the door, got outside, rolled the window back up, pushed the lockdown manually, and then shut the door again. That is possible. It's extremely unlikely. And she had never done that. She'd never even gotten her own seat undone, let alone that complicated maneuver of getting out and reshutting the door and locking.
Oh yeah, that nap, it was a power nap. It unlocked things in her brain that she didn't even know was there.
So obviously the police are called, they show up, they're searching the area, they can't find this child, and then it starts to snow and the temperatures start to drop. So the police and volunteers stay out all night. There is no sign of this child, and the Crawfords are bracing for the worst. The next day around 11 a.m., 3 miles away from where Faye went missing, she walks onto the property of someone's house. She was barefoot, but she was more or less okay. Obviously the parents are elated. They're so happy their daughter's okay. Now, normally when somebody goes missing, the investigation stays open until they're discovered. If they're discovered alive, even if the circumstances are really weird, because they're alive, it more or less ends the investigation, because what are you looking for at this point? They're found, they're alive, everything's okay. It's rare that an investigation would continue after they've been found. And in this case, the police left the investigation open because they couldn't understand how Faye could have gotten out of that vehicle, considering how difficult that would have been. And how did she get 3 miles away in less than 12 hours in the middle of the night walking through a forest? Not to mention, historically, kids are creatures of habit. If they're missing and they're in the middle of the woods, but it's nighttime, they don't just keep walking. They lay down and they go to sleep. And then when the sun comes up, they get up and then they keep moving. So for her to have gone 3 air miles from where she went missing to this farmstead, that means she did not lay down and go to sleep. She kept walking all through the night. So none of it added up. And then when they asked Faye what happened, she would just smile and laugh. That's all they could ever get out of this child. So despite leaving the investigation open, no one ever came to any sort of conclusion about how she...
I've come to a conclusion. Faye's a creepy little shit. Little girl, don't look at me and laugh. I've seen scary movies. Is she blonde? You can't trust the little blonde girls with the curlies and blue eyes. They demons. I've seen scary movies. I've watched Annabelle. You can't, fuck you, but no.
She got out of that car, and how she covered that distance or why. It's just a big mystery, like all of these missing 411 cases.
Gage Wayment.
In 2001...
I like that name, Gage. They call me Gage. You can call me Gage.
Paul Wayment was 37 years old. He was a construction worker living in Salt Lake City, and he was about to get divorced for the second time. In his first marriage, after the divorce, he got sole custody of their 4 children. He was a great father. The judge saw it that way and said the kids were better off with him. And following...
And that's just, it don't happen very often. 9 times out of 10, in most cases, the child's put with the mother. Even if the mother's unfit, the child's usually still put with the mother, and they're like different, like little circumstances, like counseling and stuff like that. So for the dad to get rights, that's dude must have been an amazing dude. Just saying.
This second divorce, he would file for sole custody of the child that they had had together, who was a little boy, 2 years old, named Gage, and he would win. So Paul is a single father of 5 children. Gage was a lot younger than the other 4 kids, and so he kind of became Paul's little buddy and went everywhere with Paul. They were very, very close. On October 25th, 2001, Paul takes Gage, puts him in the back of his truck, he buckles him into his car seat, and the 2 of them head off to this area where Paul would hunt for deer. It was actually a private deer hunting area that was totally enclosed by a fence. Now, in order to access this private area, you needed to be a member, and Paul was a member, and once you become a member, they give you a gate code. And so Paul and Gage drive up, he gets to the gate, he punches in the code, he opens up the gate, the 2 of them drive in. He said he shuts the gate and locks it, and the 2 of them head up this path to this area where he planned to look for some deer. When he parked the car, he saw that Gage was passed out in his car seat and just did not look like he was going to be psyched to get out and go look for deer. Paul thinks about it for a minute and he decides, you know what, I'm going to leave Gage in the back seat. I'll just shut and lock the car. He's warm, he's taken care of. I'm going to go spend just a couple of minutes looking for deer and then I'll come back and I'll get him. So he hops out, he locks the car, and he walks a little ways away from the truck where it's still right behind him. But a couple of other hunters that were on this area, they saw Paul, they flagged him down, and they started talking. He gets preoccupied, and after 30 minutes or so, he realizes he needs to go back and check on his son. And when he goes back up, the front door on Gage's side is open and Gage is gone. Paul runs up to the vehicle. He can't believe that Gage is gone. Paul screams for the other hunters to come over and help him. He's like, I can't find my son. They start looking in the area, and apparently Paul was so grief-stricken, he began vomiting. He was totally hysterical, and he kept saying, it's my fault. It's my fault. I left him here. Police show up, and this massive search is launched. But you got to remember that this is a gated-in area. Everything is locked. You have a code to get in here. And the only people that apparently were on this site at the time were the other hunters that Paul was talking to. And so obviously that casts a huge spotlight on those hunters and Paul being responsible for whatever's happened to Gage. But initially they just focus on looking for this child. And after a little bit of searching, and there's absolutely no sign of this kid, they do turn on Paul. He's like, you know what, if anything happened to my son, it's my fault. I left him in the vehicle, it's my fault. Like, he's not being defensive at all. He is 100% saying, it's my fault, I did this. He's not saying I harmed my child, but he's taking full responsibility for whatever's happened. And the police pick up on that, and they're like,
yeah, all he's saying is it's my stupidity because, you know, you get your kid out the damn car. I'm sorry, I don't give a shit where you are, people. Get your kid out the damn car. I don't care if they just fell asleep and you got to deal with a cranky asshole. At least that cranky asshole is going to be in there with you, not where the ever.
You know what? I think he's telling the truth. And he's also saying that he was with those other hunters and they're the only other ones here. So for 4 days, this massive search is launched all over this hunting area, even beyond the hunting area, and there's no sign of this child. He's just gone. And so they terminate the search, but Paul's church offered to send another 150 volunteers to continue the search. And one of those volunteers was a man by the name of James Wilkes. He was an avid outdoorsman and he brought along his dog, Dino. And over the course of this search, James and his dog actually get lost, which David Paulides says is very rare. There's so many.
Now, Flintstones, the purple dinosaur with spots. Dino. Okay. I was like, where have I heard that?
People doing the search at one time, it would be hard to get lost, but it does happen. And so James and his dog wind up miles away from where they were supposed to be searching. They don't know where they are. They're lost. And so that night, the temperatures are dropping, it's snowing, and James and his dog ended up getting under a tree, in this little pocket under a tree, and they huddled together all night. And James said it was one of the worst nights of his life. He didn't sleep much, but at some point in the morning when the sun started to come up, he was happy to be alive. You know, he didn't die of hypothermia. and he and Dino start walking. And they've only walked a couple of minutes when the dog stops and he starts licking something on the ground. And he looks down, and under a couple inches of snow, it's the body of Gage. James scoops up the body, and for hours they start walking back kind of generally towards where he thinks he needs to go. He ends up finding a fence that he recognized, and since he was exhausted from carrying the boy, he placed the boy's body near a fence post that he knew he'd be able to recognize, and he and Dino made their way up to the search and rescue headquarters, told them where to find the boy's body, and they went back and they collected the boy's body. Now, because James is the one to find the boy, they immediately had to treat him like a suspect. They polygraphed him because you found the boy, no one else has found him, you're ways away from the search, but he passed his polygraph. James would say to police that when he found the body, there were all these tracks around the body. They looked like canine tracks, but they weren't Dino's, and he knows they weren't Dino's because he was holding onto Dino all night, and he hadn't been in this particular area the night before. So investigators are like, if there were other canine tracks all over that area, it means, one, we searched it, but if we searched it, why didn't they pick up on the boy, who they're trained to smell? Or what animal was this? Did it have anything to do with why Gage is here in the first place? After the autopsy, it was determined that Gage died from hypothermia. His father was absolutely devastated. You know, he spent all this time at the site where his body was found. He created a shrine for his son. He was known to spend hours in his vehicle trying to figure out how his son got out of his seat and then made his way out that front door, something he had never seen his son do. He was just totally devastated, and he was ultimately charged with negligent homicide, and he pled guilty to it and was given 30 days in jail, but before his sentence was carried out, he took his own life. So like all cases that David Paulides covers in the Missing 411 series, we're left with a lot of questions, and unfortunately they may never get answered. But that doesn't stop us from speculating, so please go in the comments and give me your best theory as to what's going on. How are these kids getting outside of these vehicles and winding up in places that seem impossible to get to? Not only will I respond to all the early commenters, the best theory will get pinned at the top of the comment section. If you enjoyed today's video and you want to see more like it, please throw the like button into the bottomless pit near Ellensburg, Washington, and also please subscribe to this channel and turn on all notifications.
Oh my God, that last one was the saddest damn thing I've ever heard in my freaking life. I was doing good all the way up into that one, though. You gotta admit, like, I was on point with the funny. I was trying anyways. That last one, bro, that fucking got me. That poor baby. Okay, here's my thing. This gate is a gate you can climb over. Is it electrified? Is there something literally keeping me out of this big old gated area? Like, if it's just a fence, that's not going to keep me the hell out. I can literally, if it's not too tall, I can jump. I mean, maybe people was in there hunting when they wasn't supposed to, where they're not supposed to. I mean, one jumps over, or maybe they raise up a part of the fence that's loose and get their dogs and stuff under. I don't know, maybe it's some wrong turn shit. I don't know, bro. I hate that he took his own life, because now the rest of his kids are not going to have a father at all. Oh my God. People, please do not take your own lives. I know life gets hard sometimes, but all you're going to do is make it harder for the people you leave behind. Believe me. It's not fun. So don't. Please, for the love of all things holy, don't do that. Because now that man's got 4 children that's going to grow up. Never know what actually happened. Did Dad do it because, you know, he killed himself, so what are we to think, you know? But like I said, it could have been some other hunters. They jumped the fence, slid the dogs under, you know, got in there and clipped a couple of things, put some hooks back on it, make it look like no one ever been there. And then the dogs could have started chasing after the boy, thinking, you know, that he was prey, and got scared, took off running. I don't know. I can't explain none of that. All I know is that last one made me feel like shit. All right. Appreciate the suggestion on the video. It was amazing. I like mysteries. I do. Now I want to go and look some of these up and, you know, dive a little bit deeper into it. I do. I love doing that. I really do. Like, I'll go when half the time whenever I'm done with Mr. Ballin, he's got me so intrigued on a story or this family's lives to where I actually just get on the computer and start looking more into it, see, you know, how deep it goes. Some of them, they go. It could be a downward. Don't go down the rabbit hole, people. Just don't go down the rabbit hole. All right. It still hurts my heart. Okay. If you're a fan of the spooky, scary, strange, or deranged, think about subscribing. If you enjoyed today's video in any way, shape, or form, please leave a thumbs up. I don't know. It's been a weird day, people. It's been a weird, like, 3 days in a row. And once again, I am very terribly sorry you guys did not get at that chapter the other day. I'll try my damnedest for that not to happen again. But next week, you will be getting all 4 videos the way you were supposed to. And starting in October, we're going to be doing a scary reaction every Wednesday. There will be one out. So if you guys have some suggestions, please leave them in the comments down below. Like I said, you know, there's Mind Seed, Slap Ham, King Frostmare, Top 5, Nuke's Top 5. Get on there. Leave some suggestions. I'll do it every Wednesday through October. All right. Now, as always, be good to one another. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. I don't know. Kids are tricky. They all little freaking Houdinis, though. I'm telling you, like, they be there. Next thing you know, they over there eating a chocolate bar. And you're like, where the fuck did you even get that damn chocolate bar? It was under the couch. Someone already took a bite of it. Give it here. Yeah, it's still good. Go ahead.